Welcome back to the VINwiki appraisal panel, where as always, I am alongside John Ficarra of Ficarra Classic and John Tamarian from Curated. And today, we are going to do certainly our most requested car collection appraisal, that one of the Sultan of Brunei. So who is the Sultan of Brunei? His name is Hassan al-Bolkiah. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but he's been the Sultan of Brunei since 1967, and he also became the Prime Minister of Brunei in 1984 when they gained their independence from the United Kingdom. Now, Brunei is a small country on the island of Borneo near Malaysia. It's a jungle, a very tropical place, and not always the best place to keep a bunch of cars, but there's a lot of crazy rumors and speculation about what the collection is, how large the collection is, how much the collection is worth, but we've done our best alongside our researcher Dan Doucette to make the most consummate list available of the Sultan's car collection. Now, it was assembled alongside his brother, Prince Jeffrey, and they've done a lot of interesting things politically that we're not really going to comment here. Some of the more entertaining things they've done was to amend their constitution to declare themselves infallible. The Sultan appointed himself as the Inspector General of the police, and they've done a lot of amazing things, including fund most of the car companies that we love in the 1990s. So our list has 2,391 cars. And I'm sure we didn't get all of them, but we did our very best, and the numbers are truly staggering. So rather than really debate a whole lot about what each car might be worth, we're gonna pick some of our favorites, talk about those, and we'll make you a list in the description so you can see all the cars that we think are probably there. And today's video is brought to you by Auto Tempest. Auto Tempest is the most powerful way to shop for your next car. They compile the results from all the major listing sites into one place. They support VINwiki, they support CarTrick, and we certainly appreciate them for supporting this video. Check them out now at the link in the description below to find your next car with Auto Tempest. Now, the first set of cars that I want to talk about are his Bentleys. The Sultan has, by our count, 361 ridiculous Bentleys from the 80s and 90s. Most of them are from the mid-90s. Most of them are based on the Azure or the Continental, and they're unreal. There's the Dominator SUVs. He's got several of those. He's got a Pegasus Azure coupe thing, a Sport Estate, which is a Continental station wagon. You know, it's almost impossible to value a collection like this, so we're going to do it sort of in the aggregate. But when I break those down, I think they're worth about $80 million.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, can we pass a resolution that's saying that we are infallible and that our our appraisals are infallible from here on out?
I second the motion.
Do you second the motion? It's passed. There we go. I'm going to throw out some of the cars that I guess we'll just go back and forth. I started at the beginning of the list alphabetically, and he's got AC Cobras and AC Aces. Now, the AC Cobra was what they built out of the Ace. They took the Ace, which had a 6-cylinder engine in it, and famously Shelby put a V8 in it. But there's a difference between a Shelby Cobra and an AC Cobra. The AC Cobra was built in England and never went to California to get built. It's identical to a Shelby Cobra. He's got 3 AC Cobras and he's got 5 Aces. Right there, that's like $4 million.
It's insane. I mean, I would say one of the coolest things for me as well is like his collection of all of these crazy cars that he had modified. So the base cars were Ferraris, and then he had them modified by Pininfarina. And one of those grouping of cars is the Ferrari Testarossas and 512 TRs that he had done. Now, most of the cars, and you guys will see this, are right-hand drive, but most of the cars were then converted to like full leather, luxurious interiors. So like his F40s all have full leather interior with sometimes Testarossa seats or one-off seats. But I fell in love with the Testarossa Spiders because really Ferrari had never made a production version of the Testarossa as a convertible. There was one made for Johnny Agnelli that sold a few years ago at auction. I believe it broke $1 million. But then there was this grouping of other cars. Now, no one knows the exact number. I had an incredible opportunity to talk to one of the former designers from Pininfarina, and they had told me that they had built 5 or 6 of each variant, so 5 or 6 Testarossas, 5 or 6 TRs, and I had the opportunity a few years ago to buy one of the Testarossas and to buy one of the 512 TRs. Now, The unfortunate part is I was concerned about the cars being right-hand drive and then importing them to the US, and I wasn't really sure if they were his cars, ordered by his cars, but apparently because he had so many cars on order and so many cars around the world at any given point, a lot of his cars were left all over the world. And a few of his cars were actually left in Singapore. There was a famous dealer there that had dealt with him for many years, and they ended up with a lot of the cars. Some of these were the Testarossas. Recently, unfortunate for me, I was making offers and trying to buy the cars, and unfortunately, they just put one up for sale at auction. And I think RM Sotheby's, the car broke well over $1 million. It was a red-black Testarossa, right-hand drive, Spider that was built by Pininfarina. So unfortunately, we couldn't buy it, but he probably has at least $10-12 million. If you value them at $1 million each today, $10-12 million just in Testarossa Spiders.
I think he's most well known, though, for the modified 456s, and he has a ton of them. He has 62 normal 456s, 6 modified as sedans that I think are, at least $100,000 each, 2 Venice Spiders, which I'd probably say are $750 each, and 6 4-door 456 wagons that I think would do $1 million each because they are just so cool. So together, I think that's $15.4 million in Ferrari 456s.
That's so crazy. All this is so crazy. This whole thing is so hard to get my head around. All of it. So I'm going after the little cars because I have 4 Porsche 928. So I figured, hey, I'll just look down the list and see how many 928s he has. He has 19 928 GTSs. He has 4 928Ss and 32 928 S4s. So he's got 55 Porsche 928s. So nobody can complain about my collection. That's probably $2.5 million in 928s. It's awesome. I love this guy.
So they're not currently on this list, but there were 2 Shizeta V16Ts that were ordered by the Sultan when the cars were new. And like Ed said earlier, the Sultan and Prince Jeffrey probably kept majority of the supercar manufacturers and luxury car manufacturers in business in the early 90s. This was a very tough time. The stock market crash of '87 hurt things for the US. Then you had the Gulf War. You had all these factors. And then basically he kept all of these businesses alive. Bentley, Aston Martin, you name it. And Shizeta actually built 2 cars that were supposed to go to the Sultan. Now, one of them never made it. It was the car that ended up at Hongxi and Singapore. That was the blue on blue car, and it was a famous car. It was actually, God rest him, Claudio Zampoli, who created the Shizeta. It was his favorite car. It was the press car. It was a famous car, blue on blue, a right-hand drive car. I had the incredible opportunity to buy that car a few years ago. We imported it to the US, and then we later sold it with RM Sotheby's. The reason we actually sold it at RM Sotheby's, it was hard to put the value on that car for anyone. Now, since then, I think the market for these crazy supercars has gone up, these crazy 90s cars. Recently, a Shizeta prototype sold for $1 million. And the other Shizeta that was originally deemed to go to the Sultan, I believe today is actually at the Marconi Museum. It's a black car. They actually took the engine out. So that's on display now at the museum, which would make sense because they actually have a few other cars that came from the Brunei collection. But again, this just further shows just the wacky cars that he collected and how he kept these boutique manufacturers in business.
And I'm going to just throw a quick geek fact in on the Shizeta because I got to work on the prototype when it was at Canepa. They call it the 16T, and everybody thinks T stands for turbo, and it's not. It stands for transverse. They put a V16 sideways in the back of this thing. And if you ever see a picture of it, it's insanely wide. That's because this motor goes from one wheel well to the other. It's 2 Italian V8s stuck together at the crank. If you ever get a chance to see one in person, I highly recommend it. It was supposed to be the design, and Ed, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was supposed to be the design for the new Diablo, and Lamborghini and Chrysler turned it down, so they decided to make it. And I think it looks a hell of a lot better than the Diablo. It's a cool car.
You were 1,000% right. We did the last interview with Zempoli before he passed away, and you're 1,000% right, John. It's an incredible story.
Now, you can't talk about the Sultan of Brunei without talking about the McLaren F1, the most iconic car of the 1990s, and he bought a bunch of them. At the moment, we believe that he still has 4 road cars. He's sold off a couple. Those are about 20 million each these days. He has 1 GT, the longer version, but the road car version of the long-tail race car. That's probably 35. He's got a GTR, which is probably 30, and 3 LMs in a rather preposterous paint scheme, but still probably the coolest car of our generation. 50 million each? So I would say that the guy has $300 million of McLaren F1s.
That's insane. This all is insane.
What a great investment, though. I mean,
Oh, right? Hey, he scored on that. I'm sure he's banking on that to pay for his kids' college, really.
but you know, if I was there cherry picking cars, certainly I would try to get one of those. And of course, nobody knows if any of these cars still run. It's widely assumed that they're in terrible, terrible shape, and that's probably true. We're kind of ballparking them based on a, average middle of the road for everything that we would guess. Not that there's any comps for most of this stuff. But if I got to pick one thing, it would be one of his W140 S-classes. Now, it would be hard to find because it would be in a sea of 403 of them. 291 of the regular cars, call those 10 grand each. 102 that were built by AMG, let's say a soft 40 for each of those. But 10 of them are the S73T with the 7.3 liter AMG naturally aspirated V12, also used in the Pagani Zonda, and they are station wagons. It's a 565 horsepower Pagani Zonda station wagon, and how amazing is that?
We all should have one. I think we all need one of those.
Car Trek S73T Expedition.
If I had to cherry pick a car out of his collection, I mean, I'd pick half of these things, obviously, but back in the 90s, Dower built a 962, a Porsche 962, which was the dominant endurance car in the 80s. They made some road-going versions of it so that they could get through a loophole to go to Le Mans, which they ended up winning with it. But they built 13 road-going versions. He has 5 of them. So I'm sure he could spare one for me so I can go drive around in my awesome, Dower 962. All of them worth a couple of $1 million, so that's $10-12 million worth right there.
I would say that if I had to cherry pick, there's one car. He only has one, which is sort of odd, but they only made 19, and that's his F40 LM. Now, when you think of the F40 LM, they were built by Michelotto, so 19 cars. We've had the opportunity to actually sell 2 of the 19. What is so crazy about his car, when you think about this in context, is the whole point of the F40 LM is a race car for basically, taking the base of the F40 and turning into a race car through Michelotto. And his car is an F40 LM, but with full leather interior and like comfort seats. So it's a black car. I believe there's a red stripe around the car, and it has a full black leather interior. So as you guys know, I love the color black on any car. I think that is probably the ultimate holy grail of any F40. I don't know if it makes sense to have full leather interior in an LM, but I would say that this car today would have to be valued anywhere between 12, 13, 14 million. Who knows? If a regular F40 LM is between 8 and 10 million, a true one-off car that was built for the Sultan, I can't even imagine.
So when I added all the numbers up, I got to about $800 million for the entire collection, which is not that much more than we got to with just 50 or so cars with Ralph Lauren's collection, but obviously he had some insanely expensive Ferraris, Bugattis, things like that. But regardless, it is the most valuable car collection in the world. Some of the estimates go well into the billions. Who knows? If the cars are really rotting in a rainforest, it's probably a lot softer than that. But Nearest makes no difference, $1 billion worth of cars.
Insane. And I will say, the one thing about this collection compared to most large collections is I actually think that this collection has a massive opportunity to continue increase in value. Majority of the cars are 80s and 90s iconic tuner cars and supercars, which are only going up in value. So I think this collection has an incredible opportunity to continue to increase in value.
I totally agree. I mean, there's a lot of upside. This insanely rich man is going to be even more insanely rich in 10 years when a lot of these things start even peaking even higher. I do have to do a special mention for one of his cars, though. I want to sneak this in because he has something in common with Elvis, which is a Stutz Bearcat 2. So, Sultan of Brunei, you're a pimp. I like you.
As we should. So thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments which of the Sultan of Brunei's cars is your favorite. And again, as always, thank you to Auto Tempest for supporting this video, for supporting VINwiki, and supporting Car Trek. You searching for your next car on Auto Tempest allows us to make more content like this. Let us know what other collections you think we should appraise next. Have a great day.